You know that gut-sinking feeling when you dig into your garden bed and find nothing but lifeless, compacted dirt that crumbles like dust in your hands? I've been there more times than I care to admit. But what if I told you that our ancestors had a secret weapon that could bring that dead soil roaring back to life, and it's been hiding in plain sight all along? Welcome back to the Soil House, where we dig deep into the secrets that make your garden thrive. Today, I'm sharing something that completely transformed how I approach soil health, and it's going to challenge everything you thought you knew about fixing poor soil. We're talking about compost tea, but not just any compost tea. This is the real deal, the ancient liquid gold that farmers have relied on for centuries before the fertilizer industry convinced us we needed bags of synthetic chemicals. Here's the thing about dead soil that most gardeners don't realize. It's not actually lacking nutrients in most cases. What it's missing is life. Your soil is supposed to be a thriving ecosystem teeming with billions of microorganisms, fungi, beneficial bacteria, and countless other creatures working together in perfect harmony. When that biological community collapses, your soil becomes sterile, compacted, and incapable of supporting healthy plant growth no matter how much fertilizer you dump on it. Compost tea is essentially a concentrated liquid extract of all those beneficial microorganisms. When you brew it properly, you're creating a microbial soup that contains everything your soil needs to regenerate itself naturally. Think of it as a probiotic drink for your garden. Just as probiotics restore the beneficial bacteria in your gut, compost tea restores the biological foundation of your soil. What makes this approach so revolutionary is that you're not just feeding your plants, you're rebuilding the entire soil food web from the ground up. The microorganisms in compost tea immediately go to work, breaking down organic matter, making nutrients available to plants, improving soil structure, suppressing diseases, and creating that beautiful, crumbly texture that every gardener dreams about. Let me get a bit nerdy here because understanding how this works will help you appreciate why it's so effective. In healthy soil, bacteria and fungi form symbiotic relationships with plant roots. The plants release sugars and carbohydrates through their roots to feed these microorganisms, and in return, the microbes break down minerals and organic matter into forms the plants can actually absorb. When soil becomes depleted or dead, this relationship breaks down completely. The microorganisms die off, often due to overuse of synthetic fertilizers, pesticides, excessive tilling, or simply years of neglect. Without these microbial workers, nutrients remain locked up in forms plants can't use, water drainage becomes poor, and the soil loses its ability to retain moisture or resist compaction. Compost tea brings this entire system back online almost immediately. Within hours of application, beneficial bacteria begin colonizing the soil. Fungi start extending their hyphal networks through the ground. Protozoa and nematodes arrive to feed on bacteria, releasing nutrients as they do. It's like watching an abandoned city suddenly come back to life with bustling activity. The beauty is that once you've re-established this biological community, it becomes self-sustaining. The microorganisms reproduce. They establish food chains, and they create the conditions for even more diverse life to flourish. Now let's get practical. Brewing compost tea isn't complicated, but doing it right makes all the difference between a mediocre brew and liquid gold. I've refined my process over years of trial and error, and I'm going to share exactly what works. You'll need a 5-gallon bucket, an aquarium air pump with an air stone, dechlorinated water, high-quality compost, and unsulfured molasses. The key ingredient is really that compost. It needs to be well-aged, dark, and earthy smelling. If your compost smells like ammonia or anything unpleasant, don't use it. You want compost that's been properly decomposed and is already teeming with beneficial organisms. Fill your bucket with 4 gallons of water. If you're using tap water, let it sit out overnight to allow the chlorine to evaporate, or use rainwater if you have it. Chlorine will kill the very microorganisms you're trying to cultivate, so this step is crucial. Place your air stone at the bottom of the bucket and start the pump running. Add about 2 to 3 cups of finished compost. Some people use mesh bags to keep things tidy, but I actually prefer letting the compost float freely because it allows better extraction of microorganisms. Then add 2 tablespoons of unsulfured molasses. The molasses serves as food for the bacteria, helping them multiply rapidly during the brewing process. Let this mixture brew for 24 to 36 hours, keeping that air pump running the entire time. The constant aeration is absolutely critical. You're cultivating aerobic bacteria, the good guys that thrive in oxygen-rich environments. If you let the brew go anaerobic by turning off the pump or brewing too long, you'll end up with putrid, stinky liquid full of harmful bacteria that can actually damage your plants and soil. You'll know your tea is ready when it develops a pleasant, earthy smell and forms a light foam on top. That foam is actually a sign of vigorous microbial activity. If it smells bad at any point, dump it and start over. Here's where gardeners often go wrong. They brew beautiful tea and then don't use it properly. Compost tea is most effective when applied immediately after brewing because the microorganisms are at their peak population and activity. The longer you wait, the more they die off. For dead or severely depleted soil, I recommend a heavy initial application. Dilute your concentrated tea at a ratio of 1 part tea to 5 parts water and apply it generously to the soil. Don't be shy. You want to thoroughly saturate the top 6 inches of soil where most biological activity occurs. This initial flooding introduces millions of organisms and gives them the best chance to establish themselves. Apply in the early morning or evening when temperatures are cooler and the sun won't immediately kill the microbes. If you can, lightly water the area afterward with plain water to help carry the organisms deeper into the soil profile. Some of the organisms will colonize the surface, but you want good distribution throughout the root zone. For truly dead soil, repeat this application weekly for the first month. I know that sounds like a lot, but you're essentially recolonizing an empty landscape. After that initial intensive period, you can scale back to monthly applications during the growing season. Many gardeners find that after a full season of compost tea applications, their soil has recovered enough that they only need occasional treatments to maintain health. Don't just apply it to the soil surface either. Use compost tea as a foliar spray to inoculate plant leaves with beneficial microorganisms that protect against disease. The same microbes that heal soil also colonize leaf surfaces and create a protective barrier against pathogens. Spray until the leaves are completely covered and dripping. I want to set realistic expectations here because I've seen too many gardeners give up too soon. While compost tea works remarkably fast compared to conventional soil building methods, it's not literally instant despite what the headline suggests. But the changes you'll see might surprise you with how quickly they appear. Within the first week after application to dead soil, you'll notice the soil surface becomes slightly darker and may develop a subtle, earthy smell. This is microbial activity beginning. The soil might also feel slightly different in your hands, less like dust and more like actual earth. These changes are subtle but real. By week 3 to 4, if you dig into treated soil and compare it to an untreated area, the difference becomes obvious. The treated soil will have better structure, it won't be as compacted, and you'll start seeing signs of life like earthworms moving in. Plants in treated areas will show improved vigor, with greener leaves and more robust growth. After 2 to 3 months of regular applications, your dead soil will be unrecognizable. It will have that rich, crumbly texture that breaks apart easily, but holds together when squeezed. It will smell earthy and alive. Water will penetrate readily instead of running off or pooling on the surface. Most importantly, plants will thrive without you needing to constantly supplement with fertilizers. The most dramatic results I've personally witnessed were in a section of my garden where nothing would grow. The soil was like concrete, gray and lifeless from years of neglect before I bought the property. After 4 months of weekly compost tea applications, that same area produced the most abundant tomato harvest I've ever had. The transformation felt almost miraculous, but it was simply biology doing what biology does best when given the right conditions. Let me save you from the mistakes I made when I first started brewing compost tea. The most common error is using chlorinated water without dechlorinating it first. I cannot stress this enough. Chlorine kills microorganisms indiscriminately. If you're using city water, you must let it sit out or use a dechlorinator from an aquarium store. Another mistake is using old or improperly made compost. Your compost tea can only be as good as the compost you start with. If you're using compost that's either too fresh and still hot or too old and depleted, you won't get good results. The ideal compost is fully finished, dark brown to black, with an earthy smell and a crumbly texture. It should have been made with diverse ingredients and properly maintained during the composting process. Many gardeners also brew their tea too long. After about 36 hours, the food sources start running out, and the microbial population can crash, or the brew can go anaerobic. You'll end up with something that smells terrible and can actually harm your soil. Stick to the 24 to 36 hour window and use it immediately. Finally, don't store brewed compost tea thinking you'll use it later. The organisms are living things that need food and oxygen. Once you stop aerating the tea, they begin dying off rapidly. Within hours, your carefully brewed tea becomes far less effective. Brew only what you can use within a few hours of finishing. Here's something that changed my entire perspective on gardening. Synthetic fertilizers don't actually feed your soil. They feed your plants directly, bypassing the entire soil ecosystem. While this might seem efficient, it actually creates long-term problems that make your soil progressively more dependent on constant fertilizer inputs. Think of it like this. If you had a broken digestive system, you could survive on IV nutrition for a while, but your digestive system wouldn't heal or improve. It would actually atrophy from lack of use. That's exactly what happens when you rely exclusively on synthetic fertilizers. The soil biology that's supposed to be processing and delivering nutrients gradually dies off because it's not needed. Your soil becomes increasingly sterile and dependent. Compost tea takes the opposite approach. Instead of bypassing the soil ecosystem, it rebuilds it. Once that ecosystem is functioning properly, it does all the work of feeding your plants naturally. The microorganisms break down organic matter and minerals, making nutrients available in exactly the forms and quantities plants need. They improve soil structure so roots can penetrate easily and water can move properly. They protect against diseases and pests. They even help plants withstand stress from drought or temperature extremes. This is why gardens maintained with compost tea and other biological approaches become easier to manage over time rather than harder. You're working with natural systems instead of fighting against them. Your soil gets healthier year after year instead of more depleted. Every garden is different, and you'll need to adapt this approach to your specific situation. If you're dealing with heavily compacted clay soil, you might need to do some initial mechanical aeration before applying compost tea to give the microorganisms access to the deeper soil layers. If you have very sandy soil that drains too quickly, incorporating some compost along with your tea applications will give better results. For vegetable gardens, I've found that applying compost tea every 2 weeks during the growing season maintains excellent soil health and plant vigor. For established perennial beds, monthly applications during active growth are usually sufficient. For containers, which are essentially isolated soil ecosystems, weekly diluted applications during the growing season keep the soil biology thriving. Pay attention to what your soil and plants are telling you. If plants are thriving and soil structure is improving, your current regimen is working. If you're not seeing results, evaluate your compost quality, brewing technique, and application methods before assuming the approach doesn't work. One last piece of advice from my years of experience: patience really does pay off. Modern gardening has conditioned us to expect instant results from bottles and bags. Biological gardening works on nature's timeline, which is faster than building soil through traditional methods but slower than dumping synthetic fertilizers. Trust the process, stay consistent, and you'll be rewarded with soil that gets better every season. Here at the Soil House, we're building a community of gardeners who understand that healthy soil is the foundation of everything. If this article has opened your eyes to a different way of thinking about your garden, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss our latest soil building secrets and garden wisdom. Share this article with fellow gardeners who are struggling with poor soil or who are ready to move beyond the fertilizer treadmill. Together, we're proving that the old ways, the biological ways, are still the best ways to grow abundant, healthy gardens that improve year after year. Let's bring our soil back to life, one garden at a time.